Never-before-seen video capturing the moment two orcas are pulverizing their prey.
One orca is holding a dead fish completely still in its mouth. Another orca is barreling in from a distance at full speed. A split second later, that fish is in pieces, dozens of them drifting through the water like confetti after a parade. This is why orcas ram sunfish until they explode. And the strangest part isn't even the impact, it's what happens right before it. So why would one orca hold a fish in place just so another orca can destroy it? And why do that to a fish that's already dead? Stay with me. In July of 2024, a marine biologist named Catherine Ayers was in the water off Baja California Sur filming orcas when she saw something nobody had ever formally described in the scientific literature before. One adult female orca grabbed a massive sunfish and held it steady, almost gently, like she was setting a plate down on a table. Then a second orca, a male, pulled back to a distance, came in at high speed and slammed into the fish right as the female let go. The impact created a massive audible crunch underwater. The sound alone made Ayers react out loud into her own snorkel. Not once, several times, which is a completely normal reaction to watching a giant fish get hit by an accelerating orca. And when she looked at what was left of that sunfish, it hadn't been torn or bitten so much as broken into numerous separate chunks, floating through the water like someone had thrown a party popper into the ocean. If you're the kind of person who needs to know why animals do the weird stuff they do, this is basically the entire point of this channel. Subscribe if you want more of this, because orcas have an entire highlight reel of behavior just like this one, and we're only getting started. A little over a year later, in September of 2025, a completely different observer filmed almost the exact same sequence happening again in the same general stretch of the Gulf of California. Same sequence, hold, release, ram, and the fish comes apart all over again. The repetition matters. It suggests the first recording wasn't just a freak accidental collision. Scientists now call this ram to fragment, and according to Ayers and her co-authors, it's the first formal description of this specific coordinated sequence in orcas. One detail makes it more impressive than pure brute force. The holding orca has to find one very specific grip point on the sunfish, something we'll get into properly in a minute, and get it exactly right before the second whale even starts moving. So this is what we can say for certain. By the end of this sequence, one whale holds, one whale rams, the carcass comes apart, and the smaller members of the group move in to eat the pieces afterward. What we can't say yet is why any of this needed to happen in the first place, because the twist that follows changes the entire story. In both filmed events, the sunfish was already dead. The orcas had already opened it up and eaten the good parts, long before the ramming even started. And this wasn't even the first time someone noticed it. One of the study's co-authors, a marine biologist named Eric Higuera, actually saw a version of this back in 2021, years before anyone published anything. At the time, he just thought he'd watched an unusually violent hunt. It wasn't until he went back through his own footage, frame by frame, that he realized what he'd actually filmed. One orca had been stabilizing the fish the entire time on purpose, while the other one delivered the hit. That's the kind of detail you only catch when you already suspect something deliberate is going on. To understand why this method even works, you have to understand what a sharptail sunfish actually is, because it might be one of the strangest big animals in the entire ocean. These things are massive. We're talking over 10 feet long and more than 4,000 pounds in the biggest confirmed individuals, which puts them among the heaviest bony fish alive today. And they don't look like a normal fish either. Picture a fish that got squished flat, lost its tail somewhere along the way, and just decided that was fine, actually. Instead of a normal tail fin, it has a stubby little rudder called the clavus, sticking out the back like a bumper. That clavus isn't just a weird evolutionary leftover. It's the exact spot the holding orca grabs onto. Out of an entire multi-thousand-pound animal with no obvious handles anywhere else, this one structure happens to be perfectly grippable. It's a little suspicious how convenient that is, like evolution left a courtesy handle on the world's least aerodynamic fish. The sunfish's skin doesn't make things easier for a predator trying to bite through it the normal way, either. It's thick, it's leathery, It's covered in rough little bumps. Underneath that, mollids like this one have a thick, collagen-rich layer that's almost entirely water. And that water is the sunfish's fatal flaw. Water doesn't compress, so hitting it at high speed doesn't just bruise the tissue, it causes catastrophic structural failure. Biting through that layer one piece at a time would take forever. Ramming it, on the other hand, turns the whole problem into a single, decisive event. For comparison, imagine trying to divide an enormous, tough-skinned package with nothing but your teeth versus just running it over with a car. One of those is obviously faster, even if it looks a lot more dramatic on camera. And it isn't like the orcas are picking a fair fight either. Sunfish often look awkward, but that can be deceptive. Recent studies show these fish can be surprisingly agile swimmers. What matters more here is that they spend a lot of time near the surface, where scientists think they warm up after deep dives and let smaller fish clean parasites off their skin. It's a great strategy for staying comfortable and parasite-free. It's a much worse strategy for staying hidden from something the size of a pickup truck that's already decided you look like lunch. To put the size in perspective, a fully grown sharptail sunfish weighs somewhere in the range of a small car. Now picture trying to process an entire car's worth of tough, rubbery meat using nothing but your mouth. Ramming it into pieces first starts to sound less like showing off and more like basic common sense. This also isn't some random, never-before-seen prey choice, by the way. Sunfish are the most frequently observed teleost prey for orcas in this region. So the surprising part here isn't that orcas are eating sunfish. It's that they figured out this specific, oddly elegant way of doing it. Put all of that together and the ram-to-fragment method starts to look less like violence for its own sake, and more like a solution to a very specific engineering problem. You've got an enormous, thick-skinned, gelatinous fish, and one particularly useful structure to grip. Ram it hard enough, and the whole design just gives way at once. So if the orcas already ate the best parts before the ram even happened, why bother finishing the job at all? This is where the actual scientists disagree, and I mean genuinely disagree, not just internet comment section disagree. One argument says this is simple, practical feeding help. Robert Pittman, a researcher who wasn't even part of the original study, pointed out that sunfish are actually hard to eat. They're dense, they're rubbery, and some shark-eating orca populations are known for teeth worn down to the gums from years of eating rough prey. If your teeth are shot and the meal in front of you is built like a tire, ramming it into smaller pieces isn't dramatic. It's just good problem solving. Under this theory, the ram is less about fun and more about turning one giant, awkward fish into pieces that even a young or older orca with bad teeth can manage. One of the study's own authors makes a version of this same point. Orcas don't have hands, they don't have claws, and they definitely don't have kitchen knives. Ramming might just be the only tool available to an animal that needs to break one impossible fish down into something it can eat. The other argument says this might be play. Catherine Ayers herself, the same researcher who filmed the first event, has said this could help younger orcas feed more easily, or it could just be fun, and that those two things aren't necessarily separate. Orcas are famous for messing around with their food long after the meal part is technically over. Think about it from a human angle for a second. Have you ever kept smashing a nearly empty ketchup bottle against the counter long after you already got the ketchup out, just because it's satisfying? Nobody needs a scientific paper to explain that behavior. Maybe orcas have their own version of the ketchup bottle, and it happens to weigh 2 tons and used to be a fish. There's also a detail that quietly supports the play idea. In the July 2024 event, a juvenile moved into the fragment cloud and fed on the smaller suspended pieces almost immediately. In the September 2025 event, a calf fed from the main carcass instead. Either way, younger orcas benefited from how the adults broke this fish down, which suggests this isn't the group's first time doing something like it. Here's the part that keeps this from being a boring debate. The researchers studying this refused to pick a side. The published research lists feeding, helping juveniles, social interaction, and play all as live possibilities and doesn't rule any of them out. That's rare. Most animal behavior research tries to land on one tidy explanation. This one just sits there, fully unresolved, daring you to decide for yourself. So which is it? Feeding, teaching, or play? Based on everything scientists have actually published so far, the honest answer is yes. People miss something important when a clip like this goes viral. It's easy to watch an orca demolish a sunfish and assume you just witnessed something completely unprecedented. You didn't. You witnessed one more entry in a very long list of orcas doing things that make scientists go, wait, why did they do that? Take seal tossing. Orcas have been documented launching seals into the air with their tails, sometimes over and over, long after the seal is already dead. Sometimes it looks like practice for younger whales. Sometimes it just looks like a game of catch that only one side agreed to play. Or take the salmon hat. Back in the 1980s, one orca in the Pacific Northwest started swimming around with a dead salmon balanced on top of its head, like a hat. Other orcas in the group started doing it too. Nobody ever figured out why, since eating the fish was never really the point. It just became a thing they did for a while and then it stopped. If that isn't culture, it's at least a really convincing impression of one. Then there's the pattern that might be the most relevant one here. Scientists have documented dozens of cases of orcas interacting with porpoises in ways that end badly for the porpoise, without ever eating it afterward. One long-term study tracked nearly 80 of these encounters over almost 60 years, and about a third of them ended with a dead porpoise that nobody ate. Researchers have proposed play, hunting practice, and even a kind of misplaced parental instinct as explanations, and none of those explanations actually cancel each other out. The wave-washing behavior documented in Antarctica might be the closest cousin to what we just watched happen to that sunfish. Orcas there will swim together in a tight group, dive under a floating chunk of ice with a seal resting on top, and create a coordinated wave big enough to knock the seal straight into the water. Sometimes it takes one wave. Sometimes the whales reset and do it again and again, chipping away at the ice a little more each time until the job is finished. That's not that different from what we just saw with the sunfish, one clean cooperative act of engineering aimed at a problem that a single whale couldn't solve alone. At some point, you have to wonder if orcas just got tired of being underestimated and decided to make every single hunt a group project. Put all of that next to the sunfish ramming, and a pattern starts to form. Orcas are one of the few animals on the planet smart enough, social enough, and coordinated enough to develop behaviors that don't map cleanly onto survival at all. They can hunt with brutal efficiency and also apparently mess around after the job is technically done. Both things can be true about the same species, sometimes in the exact same afternoon. This also isn't just one lone genius orca figuring this out in isolation either. The two filmed ramming events happened over a year apart in roughly the same stretch of ocean, which suggests this may be a locally learned technique, though researchers haven't confirmed whether the same individual whales were involved in both events. Orcas already teach each other specialized hunting styles in other parts of the world, so a shared, oddly specific party trick like this one actually fits right in with everything else we know about how they pass knowledge around. Once you know that, this stops being a story about one weird, viral clip. It becomes a story about how much orca behavior we're still discovering, in real time, from footage regular people happen to catch on their phones and cameras during a boat trip. Some of the smartest animals on the planet, and we're still catching them doing brand new things. Which honestly says more about how little we still know than it does about the whales themselves. We've been studying orcas for decades, and they're still finding new ways to surprise the people who study them for a living. So why do orcas ram sunfish until they explode? The honest answer is that we don't fully know yet, and the scientists studying it are comfortable saying so out loud. It might be a feeding trick for an animal with bad teeth and a tough meal. It might be a lesson for a younger whale learning how the world works. It might just be something fun to do with your food after the important part is already over. Maybe it's all three at once, depending on which orca in the group you happen to be watching that day. What we do know is this. Somewhere in the Gulf of California, one of the smartest animals in the ocean looked at an enormous, awkward, thick-skinned fish, found one particularly useful structure to grip, and turned teamwork into demolition. Whether that's hunting, teaching, or play, it's exactly the kind of decision that shouldn't make sense, and somehow does anyway. And somewhere out in that same stretch of ocean, right now it's probably happening again.